Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to TA Live. We will be recording this event. We just pushed the record button. My name is Shelley Artis with RMTC-DHH, and I will be monitoring the room for the presenter. Welcome to this 1-hour webinar titled Beginning with a Why, an Introduction to Closed Captioning. After the presentation is complete, we will take questions. At the top of your screen, you should see two icons. One is a speaker to turn on the audio. The second one looks like a person raising their hand. You can use that to communicate a quick information with the presenter, such as agreement, disagreement, speak louder, or slow down. The chat box is for asking questions and making comments during the presentation. Today we have Dr. Luis Perez. Luis Perez is an inclusive learning advocate based in St. Petersburg, Florida. He has more than a decade of experience working with educators to help them integrate technology in ways that empower all learners. Luis holds a doctorate in special education and a master's degree in instructional technology from the University of South Florida. He was selected as an Apple Distinguished Educator in 2009, as a Google and Education Certified Innovator, formerly a Google Certified Teacher in 2014, and currently serves as a professional learning chair of the Inclusive Learning Network of the International Society for Technology and Education, ISTE, which recognized him as its 2016 Outstanding Inclusive Educator. His work has appeared in publications such as Closing the Gap Solutions, The Journal, and The Loop magazine, and he presented at national and international conferences such as the South by Southwest EDU, ISTE, CSUN, CSUN, ATIA, and Closing the Gap. So with that introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Perez, starting with a why, an introduction to closed captioning. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, and thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. I hope you're doing well, and welcome to this presentation on captioning. Actually, there's a couple of updates to my bio, just very quickly. I'm starting January 1st. I will be working as a technical assistant specialist for the National AIMS Center at CAST, something that I'm really excited about. And then also, I've moved on from being the professional learning chair of the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network to now being its president-elect, starting next summer at the ISTE conference. So I'm really excited about that. Both changes, both exciting changes that are coming to my life, and hoping that it will allow me to continue the work that I do as an inclusive educator. All right, so let's begin with some objectives for today. What I hope to do is to define some of the key terms related to captioning so that you're clearer when you hear these terms thrown around, what they mean. We'll identify some of the benefits of captioning. So that is in the title where I've mentioned the why. That's going to be a big part of this presentation. I'm going to show you how to get started with captioning, especially if you're sharing videos on YouTube and other social media sites. And then get to know some of the software, and there's some really exciting developments in that area with software that you can use for captioning. Some of it free and some of it commercial. So we'll look at that. And then finally, talk about some best practices for improving the quality of captions. Because as we know, it's not just enough to caption the videos that we share with our learners. It's also important to make sure those captions have a high quality to them, so that helps with understanding. So before we get going, I want to play a quick video for you. So we're going to try to bring that over, play that video for you, and then I just want you to just pay attention to that video for a second. All right, so in the chat area, what do you think this video is about? I know that was really quick, but just share with us, what do you think the video is about, the rest of the video, because that's just a short introduction. Shelly says the Great Pyramids. Kara says Egypt. Candace is typing, so I'll just give you a second, Candace. There was no sound. That was intentional, Candace. I did that on purpose because I wanted you all to experience what a student who is deaf or hard of hearing experiences when they're in the classroom and we play a video that is not accessible. So what if I told you that that video was actually the introduction to a math lesson on 3D shapes, right? On pyramids and similar shapes. So again, without the captions, that student would be lost in that lesson. So we want to make sure that we add the captions because that would be helpful for understanding, and it would really reduce some of the frustration that the student would experience from not being able to access the content in that video. All right, so I talked about the goals for the session. I want you to set a personal goal for yourself. So what is it that you want to get out of this session? So go ahead in the chat area and let me know what that goal is for you. That will give me an idea of what you're wanting to get out of the session. And what I'm doing here is modeling UDL. So it's important to allow people some time to set their own goals as well for learning so that it's more meaningful to them. Great, Candace. So learn more about closed captioning options for students who are DHH. SR wants to learn more about caption software techniques. Excellent. You've come to the right place. Updated tools, for sure. I'm going to share some updated tools that you can use for captioning. Great, excellent. So let's keep going here. All right, so what are closed captions? I'm going to just show you an example of what video with closed captions might look like. So this is a video that I did for a friend of mine named Logan Prickett, who uses assistive technology, and this video includes captions. So you, at the bottom of the screen, you can see a box that has some text on it, and then what's important there is it identifies who's speaking at any given moment. So you can identify who the person is who's speaking, you can see what they're saying represented as an alternative. So captions are a text alternative to the audio content of a video, so that if you can't hear the video, then you have an alternative means of accessing the information. Behind the scenes, this is what the captions look like. It's basically just a special file where you have the text that's going to be displayed on the screen, and then you have some timing information. And that timing information tells the player when to display the captions and then when to hide them so that you can continue on to the next one. And so that's what the captioning software is doing. It's putting in those time codes so that the captions show up and synchronized to what people are saying in the video or whatever is playing back as audio in the video. So let's talk about just really quickly here some key terms, because I find that it's important to have a start from the same page when it comes to key terms. So the first one is subtitles versus captions, and I tend to hear a lot of misunderstanding around this area. So in the chat area, what do you think is the difference between subtitles and captions? I'll give you a second to answer that. Subtitles are already set up. Candace says captions are real time. Give you one more second. I see a couple of people are typing. Subtitles don't identify sound, says Kara. And I'll give Lynn a chance to type in as well. And anybody else, go ahead and just let me know. What do you think the difference is between subtitles and captions? We definitely want to make sure that we are on the same page with terms. Subtitles, says Lynn, spoken words, captions, additional identifiers. All right, so I think some of you are on the right path here. So with subtitles and captioning, the big difference is subtitles just have the dialogue. And that's usually because you want to present the information in a different language than what the video was originally recorded in. And so generally that's for providing access to people who may not speak the language of the video, right? So it's often a translation of the audio into another language. Captions are typically in the same language, and they include more than just the dialogue. They include any environmental sounds if they're important to understanding. So it could be that in the video, the person's at a train station and you might hear some of the sounds in the background, like the train pulling into the station and so on, reflected in the captions. Also, captions are going to have speaker identification, where subtitles may not always have that. So captions go beyond just the dialogue. They include additional information about environmental sounds and the like. How about open and closed captions? This is another area where there is some confusion. So the key difference is that open captions are burnt into the video file. You can't hide them. Closed captions can be shown or hidden, so you have additional flexibility. If the person doesn't need the captions, or if they find that the captions may be distracting, which could be the case in some situations, they can go in and select an option within their video player and they can hide those captions. So closed captions just have a lot more flexibility for the end user, for the person viewing the video, than open captions. And then this is a newer term that you may start to see a lot, which is closed caption versus subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. So the key difference is basically just a technical one. Closed captions are not supported by the HDMI cables that are often used to connect a video player like a DVD player, whereas subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing are supported over HDMI. And so a lot of commercial videos now ship with the subtitles for the deaf and hard of hearing. So in function, they're very similar. It's just a technical difference there with how they are sent to players and so on. All right, so I have a quick trivia question for you. Let's see if any of you have any guesses as to what was the first caption television program. I always get some interesting answers when I post this question. So go ahead in the chat area. Let me know what you think. The first caption television program. Some of you captioning experts may already know that. Something on PBS, Shelley. You're on the right path there. Laura and Hardy, the Flintstones. I think Shelley is getting warmer than the rest of you. So let's see if giving you the hint from Shelley. What do you think it could be? So it's something on PBS. We know that. Rose is typing Sesame Street. So that's a pretty good guess. All right. So let's see who was right. Kara says chef. So here's your answer. It was Julia Childs, the French chef, in the early 1970s. But that is a trick question, though. I said closed caption. But it turns out that this was an open caption program. So in other words, the captions were always turned on. It actually wasn't into the early 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, that we actually got closed captions because of this hardware device that's on the screen. This is called a closed caption decoder, the Telecaption 4000. And so when those decoders came out, then the television sets of the time could display those closed captions. Of course, now the captioning decoder is built into most of our TVs, and there are laws that require that, like the new Video Accessibility Act that was passed just a few years ago. So in the 1980s, just to give you an idea, these were the first closed captions, so technically closed caption, not just open caption, video programs on March 16th, 1980. There was a Disney movie that night. It's a Sunday night. I looked this up, Son of Flubber, and there was also a Burt Reynolds football comedy. I forget the name of it, but and then of course we couldn't keep it all lowbrow. We had to go with some highbrow content. Masterpiece Theater on PBS also had closed captions that night. So I think Shelley, you get a prize. I don't know what that price will be, but you were very close there. All right, so let's talk about some of the reasons why we would want to include captions. So, of course, one of the reasons is that there's a substantial population of people who can't access the content without the captions. Overall, in the United States, we have more than 37 million people with disabilities. That's about 15% of the population. And so they may need the captions just as the means of accessing information for whatever goals they have, whether it's education or participating in the workforce and so on. But also, it's not just people with disabilities. We may all at some point need captions because, especially as we age, our ability to hear clearly kind of diminishes. And so age is one of the greatest predictors of disability. In fact, there's a UN statistic that over the age of 60, we're 46% more likely to have a disability of some kind. So again, as we age, captions may be a part of life for us. And overall, captions are just a great example of universal design. And the way that I summarize UDL or universal design is with this quote: "What is essential for some is almost always helpful for all." And we see many examples of that in our environments. Everything from the ramps that were originally developed for people in wheelchairs, but now delivery people can use those ramps. Parents who are pushing a child in a stroller can use the ramps. Well, captions are another great example, right? You don't have to have a hearing difficulty in order to benefit from captions. You could just be at the gym and, the gyms can be really loud and maybe you want to follow along with the news. Or you could be at a busy airport lobby where it's impossible to hear, even if you have headphones on. The ambient noise is just too loud. And so you could turn on the captions and still be able to follow along with the latest updates from the news and so on. Or it could be just that you want to fall asleep at a different time than your partner. And so by turning on the captions, you can continue to enjoy that Netflix movie that you've been waiting to watch while they go to sleep without the sound on. All right, so I do have some information here. There have been some research overviews or that has shown some of the benefits of captions. I created a short URL for you. I can put that in the chat area as well. So if you want to access that link, it is bit.ly, and then it's CC benefits, the number 4 and all. And it's some of the words are in capital or capitalized. So you want to make sure you type that in exactly because it is case sensitive when you use these short URLs. So this is a research overview by Gansbacher in 2015. And I'm just going to summarize some of the key components of that, some of the research on captioning. So in addition to being an accessibility consideration, captions have benefits for children who are learning how to read. And having those captions turned on can have an impact on a number of different skills that are involved in learning how to read. Everything from decoding to vocabulary acquisition, word recognition, and overall, captions is just another way that we can expose children who are learning how to read to print even more. So there's some references there of some of the researchers who looked into this question. Can also benefit somebody learning a second language. So when students watch a video that's in the second language, they have improvements in word recognition, decoding skills, many of the same skills that I mentioned earlier for those who are learning in their first language. And by the way, as a sort of personal aside, this is the reason why I speak English. You may debate how well I speak it, but when I came to the United States at the age of 11, I had just a few months to learn how to speak English from scratch before I started school. And so I just spent the whole summer watching shows on PBS. And PBS has captions, right? So I was able to just follow along with some of that content, and it really did a lot to expose me to the language, so that going into school in the fall, I was fortunate to come during the summer. It gave me a little bit of a head start. So it's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about caption, beyond just accessibility. It's the needs that some of our ESL or English as a second language students have. which I've experienced myself as a person learning a second language. And then has benefits for adults too. There are quite a few adults out there who don't know how to read, and so with captions, it's just another way that we can make the content accessible to them and expose them to print and help them learn how to read. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there's all the universal design benefits. You can watch the video in a noisy environment or in a place where you can't turn on the sound, like an airport or a gym or a restaurant. And then in the classroom, what if your speakers don't work? You could still turn on the captions, and then it doesn't keep you from continuing with your lesson. Or, it could be that you're watching a video where the speaker has a strong accent. Like mine sometimes when I get tired, especially later in the day. So being able to turn on those captions could help provide some clarity for the students who are watching the video. Or it could be that you're in a history lesson and you're watching an old video that has a lot of cracks in the audio, or just the audio quality wasn't great when it was recorded. And so, being able to turn on the captions is just another reinforcement. How about any others in the chat area? Any others that you can think of? Any other reasons why captions would be beneficial? I'll give you a second to go ahead and type that into the chat area. For music lyrics, that's great, Rose. I hadn't thought of that one, but yes, especially if you're listening to music that has a really fast pace, you may not be able to capture what they're saying. So having the caption can be helpful there. Kara says technical terms, absolutely. If you're learning, each field has its own specialized vocabulary. And so I could tell you a story about my experience with statistics and how I thought my professor, who had a really strong accent, kept saying one thing all semester. And then it wasn't until the end of the semester that I found out that he was actually saying something else. So every field that has specialized vocabulary, captions can help reinforce that vocabulary if you see it also represented as text. Candace, so you don't annoy your husband when I don't hear what is said during the movie. That's great. So I have a little tip for you. If you have the latest Apple TV, so like the Apple TV 4th generation and up, and you're watching a video that you've maybe purchased from iTunes or anything like that, if you hold down the Siri remote and you say, "What did you say?" or what did they say? It will actually rewind the video 15 seconds and turn on the captions automatically so that you don't miss what was said in the video. So that's just since Candace mentioned that about always asking the other person what's being said in the movie. That's just a little trick if you have an Apple TV that you can use in the future yourself. All right, and then finally, it helps with search. So when your content has captions, I love this quote from Wendy Chisholm, who's an accessibility advocate. And she said, "Google is a deafblind user with millions of friends and dollars to spend." So if you want people to be able to find your content and be able to use it, then you have to make sure that it's accessible and has captions. Because Google can't see your images, it can't watch your videos. Google is, all it can do is process text. And so if you have captions, those captions can be indexed and it can make the content much easier to find and use. Here is a statistic from a marketing firm, YouTube. When you have captions in your YouTube videos, you have more views, not only when the video is first released, but also over the lifetime of that video. And this is also important on social media services like Facebook, where people may be accessing the content somewhere where they can't turn on the audio. And in fact, now the videos on Facebook, they will come on with the captions automatically, and then you can unmute them. It's just kind of making an allowance for that, the fact that we're accessing video in places where we didn't before because of these mobile devices that allow us to go different places. So a trivia question again in the chat area. This is a 2006 UK study, looked at the percentage of viewers who use closed captions. What is your guess as to what percentage were deaf or hard of hearing? So in the chat area, just take a guess. What percentage? There's no wrong or right answer. So Candace says 30%. Ezra says 18%. Shelly says 70%. I'll let Rose finish typing. 70%, 45%. All right, you ready for the big reveal? About 20%. So only about 20% were deaf or hard of hearing. The vast majority of people that were using the captions were not people that reported having a disability. So that just kind of goes to show you that captions are not just for people with disabilities. They are there for everyone. And there's the source for that study. It's Ofcom, and it's from 2006. So those numbers may have changed a little bit, but I would predict that the proportion it's about the same. All right, so how do I get started? Let's say that you have bought into captions. You think they're essential, not just for people with disabilities, but for everybody. And so the next step is, how do I do it? So there are three different ways we can proceed here. The first is, and this is the one, the one I would prioritize, is demand captioning. Right? So let's use the power of the market to increase the amount of captioned content that's out there. So when you request materials from a publisher, I am hoping that will be the first question that comes out of your mouth during those conversations. Is the content captioned? So that would be the first priority, is to request that caption materials, caption content is made available. The second one would be, let's say that you have hours and hours of video that you want to have captioned. That could be impractical for you to do that on top of all of the things that you have to do as an educator or as somebody who supports educators. So when that is the case, probably the best thing to do is to contact a captioning service. And I'm going to share one in the chat area. This is one that I really like. They provide a lot of resources, and it's called 3Play Media. I'll see if I can find the link before we're done here. But there are a number of captioning services out there. They have the workforce that's dedicated to doing this. They have some automation that they can bring to bear on the captioning process. And so they can do this in a very short amount of time and get it back to you so that you can provide the captions to the people that you support on a timely basis. The one thing I would say, even if you go with an external captioning provider, is quality assurance. Make sure you spend some time looking over those captions. And that doesn't mean just play like the first minute of the captions. They could be great at the beginning. You want to make sure, I generally tell people, go somewhere in the middle of the video and play, a few minutes of it, and then go somewhere towards the end of the video and play a few minutes there as well. Or just pick a random spot in the video and just spend a few minutes looking over those captions. Even though those companies are really, really good and they have their own quality assurance process, we still want to make sure we check their work, just to make sure it's accurate and timed well and styled well as well, which I'll talk about later. So those are the first two avenues. I think you'll get the most bang for the buck with those two. But there are times when there is that one short video you want to share in the classroom, and you can't wait, for it to be delivered by a publisher, and you just don't have the time to wait for a company to turn around and do the captioning. It may be a video that's kind of related to something going on in the news, and you want to be able to show it in the classroom, something like that. And then it's something that you just don't have the time to outsource it, so you have to do it yourself. So what can we do? Well, the first thing is there are services that do automatic captions. This is the first rule of captioning is say no to automatic captions like the ones that YouTube does. There is a bad term that's associated with automatic captions. It rhymes with captions, but I'm not going to say it because this is a family show. You can say it in the chat area if you want, but basically their quality is just not real good at this time. We just don't have the technology, although it is getting better and better all the time. So it's something to keep an eye on. I've noticed that YouTube captions have gotten a little bit better lately, but still, we're not quite there yet. So say no to automatic captions, or as Kara said in the chat area, you can read it yourself. Say no to more, you know what. All right, so I'm gonna skip the third video here. Actually, no, let's bring that video up. Here's an example. I want to show you some automatic captions. So if we could bring that video, parts of a flower, out here.
They
There we go.
smell so
All right,
good.
so let's listen to this video.
They are the most beautiful part of the plant.
Yeah, they look so lovely. I love flowers. Let's make a flower by magic.
You can do anything.
Not everything, but I can make a flower.
Let's start.
Yeah, let me first bring some sepals. You know, these sepals protect the bud till it opens.
So as you can see, poor flower, right? It's been stapled all over the place. So definitely not what we intended with that video when we do those automatic captions. And this is, by the way, one that's used at my girlfriend's school. My girlfriend's a sign language interpreter, and she works at a school that's a center for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And they used this video in one of the lessons. So again, is an example, as Kara said there, it's a captioning fail, right? Because just the automatic captions don't do it. So how do we do it right? All right, so there are some quick tips. On YouTube, you can actually edit the automatic captioning. So that's a great way to start, is let YouTube do most of the work for you. But then you can go in and you can clean them up and make them make sense. So how do you do that? All right, so this is for videos that you own, right? So you've created a video or you have permission to share the video. And so what you would do is you will upload it to YouTube, and then you would click on the option for Creator Studio from your account. And when you go into the video's properties, you will find a tab for subtitles and closed captioning. At that point, you'll see, after a few minutes, sometimes it takes a while for YouTube to process those automatic captions, but you should see one already created for you, one caption track, and it should say English and automatic. You could go ahead and just select that one, and then here's the key. You'll click on Edit. When you do that, it shows you the time codes and it shows you the text for the captions. And so the next thing you need to do is go through and edit that text. You can replace some of it generally does, where it fails is with proper names. So it always gets my name wrong, especially my last name. In this case, Rhiannon Gutierrez, who's one of our ISTE Inclusive Learning Network members, there's no way the YouTube captioning, the automatic option, is going to capture that. So I had to go in and fix it, and everywhere that it occurred in that video. So you would edit the text. You could also move the captions around. So you would grab the handle for any of the captions in the timeline that appears underneath the video. And if it doesn't play correctly, like in the same point where that audio occurs in the video, you can just move it over. You could also drag the beginning or the end of each of these squares for the caption, and you can make it longer or shorter. So you can also edit the timing of the individual captions. And then finally, the last step is to publish those edits. And then that will make sure that the changes that you've made are saved so that they're available. Now, just a couple of things or tips that I found from doing a lot of YouTube captioning. The first one is make sure that you then go in and unpublish the automatic captions. Because when people play the video, that may be the first option. So we want to make sure that the captions that we edited, that have all of our changes, that's what's going to be played by default. So you can just go in and select the automatic captions and then unpublish them. And then only your captioning track will be displayed in the options. The other thing to know is I've read in a few places that when you edit the automatic captions, then they are not indexed by Google. So if search engine optimization is important to you, there is a workaround. What you could do is edit the automatic captions, download them as a file to your computer, and then re-upload them, which is the next option that I'm going to cover. And when you do that, it looks like it fools Google, and then it does index those captions. So just something to be aware of if you're creating marketing videos for your school or your district or anything that's outward facing, where you're allowing people to find it is important, is that you can edit those automatic captions, but you have to be sure that you download them and then re-upload them as a captioning file. So that's the next step, or the next option, is that you can upload a transcript file and have YouTube figure out the captioning. So if you already have access to a transcript, in a text file, a Microsoft Word file that you've exported as text, and that file is in the right format that YouTube expects, and I'll tell you in just a second what those formats are, then YouTube can go in and do the automatic captioning. And it does a great job with that, because that's an easier task for the automated captions. They can figure out when you pause and when you start speaking again, and put in those codes that are actually part of the captions. So this is, you're going to get better results, or more accurate results, if you start with a transcript and then upload it to YouTube. So in here, you'd be very similar to creating or editing the automatic captions. It's just that we're going to click on the pull-down menu and choose Add New Subtitles, or CC, right, for closed captions. And then we're going to choose the language. So we want to let YouTube know what language this text is in. And then choose the option for Upload a File. And then finally, we'll choose Transcript. And that will go in and put in the timings for our transcript that we've uploaded. The other thing you could do, if you already have that transcript, is you could copy and paste and then have YouTube auto sync. So to do that, basically you'll choose that option, and then it'll give you a text box, and you could either listen to the video and type what is being said in the video in the text field, or you can just copy and paste from a text file. And what's nice here is, as you type, you can press the space bar and you can pause the video, so that you could also rewind it a few seconds to make sure that you have the correct information, especially if you're dealing with a proper name. You may need to hear it a few times to get it just right. Or there's multiple people speaking, which happens sometimes. Then you can rewind it a few times. So that's another option there. So YouTube has come a long way in terms of providing support for captioning. And they have a help file, which is going to be in the handout that you're going to get. So I've linked to that. You can see the different options that you have for YouTube captioning, because that's the primary way that a lot of people share videos. It's one of the most popular sites. Let's see. All right, so let me go on here to the next one. So the first rule of captioning, this is what I found to be helpful in my work, is start with a transcript, because that's going to give you lots of options. Plus, as a video person, somebody who creates videos, this means that I end up with a better video in the end, or a better presentation, because I have that transcript, and so I'm able to eliminate a lot of that dead time that often occurs during videos, or the ums and the ahs. So when I work with kids in creating their videos, this is the first thing we do, is we create a transcript as a foundation for the video. And if we do that, then basically our captions are done, because we can then import that transcript file, or that transcript of the video, into YouTube, and have those captions be more accurate. So I always start with a transcript with every single video that I do, every presentation. All right, so captioning software, that's the other option. You can create an actual caption file that has everything in it. It has the text, it has the timing, and what you need to know is the formats that these websites or services support. So here is the ones for YouTube. It's .srt or or .sbv, B like boy, V like Victor, and very similar for Vimeo, SRT, SEC, and so on. VTT is actually becoming the standard for web video, so you're going to hear a lot more about that format going forward. But right now, a lot of the services, you'll notice SRT is something that they have in common. So if you're exporting from a captioning program, SRT gives you a lot of flexibility because you can upload that captioning file in multiple places. Now, new software that's out right now that I want to encourage you all to check out because it's free. It's from the National Center on Accessible Media, and it's called Cadet. It stands for Caption and Description Editor. So if you want kind of take it to the next level in terms of captioning, Cadet is a great way to start. And it doesn't just create captions. You can also create audio descriptions. So this came out just a few months ago. And so here's a description of Cadet and some of the things it can do. First of all, it's a web app, so it works on all major browsers. I've used it on Windows. I've used it on the Mac. As Kara says, she just learned how to use Cadet in an afternoon because it's really easy to use. That's something that they emphasize in creating this tool. It uses video formats that play natively on the web. So again, you're going to be able to create those YouTube captions with no problem. You can see the range of different formats that it supports, starting with VTT or Web VTT, which is going to be fairly standard going forward, SRT for YouTube and Vimeo, and many other formats. And you can import a transcript, you can import a caption file. So this is a great way to take those captions to the next level, to clean them up, make them more accurate, and make sure that the timing is even better. Now, this is what I was using for a long time before Cadet came out. It's a tool called MovieCaptioner. It's not free. It costs $99, but you can also get an educator license for $49. It's put out by a company called Syncremedia. And if nothing else, even if you don't purchase MovieCaptioner, I would still encourage you to go to their website because they have some great content on captioning. They have a nice handout that you can print out, and it has a lot of information about the technical details of captioning. So Syncremedia is definitely a website to visit, and if you want to download MovieCaptioner, that's the place where you would do it. It has a 14-day free trial, so you can try it out for 14 days, see if it works for you, and then if you want to purchase it, then you have that decision to make at that time. This is my workflow, or has been my workflow for some time, but it's going to change a little bit because now I have Cadet. So generally what I would do is I would create my captions in MovieCaptioner. I would export it in the appropriate format, and then I would either add the captions to the file, which is something you can do in MovieCaptioner. You can end up with just a video, that you can upload that has the captions already in it, or you can upload your video to a place like YouTube or a website like YouTube, and then add the captions to it there. So that's been generally my workflow, but like I said, Cadet is probably going to take over much of the work that I used to do in MovieCaptioner. There is going to be a place for MovieCaptioner though, because some of the videos that I create don't just end up on YouTube. Sometimes they end up on iTunes U. They end up in other places where I may need a different format. Here's what MovieCaptioner looks like. It's just like Cadet, very simple, very easy to learn. The biggest thing with MovieCaptioner is probably the setup. Making sure that everything you need for it to work is installed on your computer, because you do need QuickTime for this to work. QuickTime Pro, not just the player that comes with Mac OS. But you need to download a special plugin. So once you get it set up though, it's very easy to learn, very easy to use. And what I love about it is that it will play the same loop for a specified amount of time. So I can let it play for 4 or 5 seconds, and I can listen to it. If it takes 5 times for me to make sure I have that person's name right, then I will do that. I will listen to it for 5 or 6 times until I get it right. So basically, as it loops the 4 or 5 seconds of video, you just type right underneath the video. You'll see a text field, and as you type, you'll see the text appear there. You have lots of options for changing the appearance of the captions, from the text size to the font and so on. I generally just stick to the defaults. And then here's what the captions look like. So you'll see the timing, and then you'll see the text. And even when you're done, you can come in here and you can edit the text just like you would on the YouTube caption editor. So as I mentioned, in terms of formats, this has a long list. You can see there almost 14 or 15 different formats that you can export out of. And so again, Cadet will probably meet my needs going forward for the most part, but there may be some times when I need to export to a specialized format. And so that's when I would use something like MovieCaptioner. By the way, it is cross-platform. It works on the Mac and on Windows, but it was originally developed for the Mac. So it is much easier to set up, and it works a lot better on the Mac. You can use it on Windows, but you'll have to convert your video so that it's in the format that it can ingest, which is QuickTime. And you can do that by installing a plugin from Apple, but again, it's not as easy as it is on the Mac. So there will be a place for this software for me going forward, but I think I will use it less and less. Of course, there are even more advanced captioning software out there like MovieCaptioner and so on. But those may be beyond the time that you want to spend on this. So I'm focusing on the tools that are really easy to pick up and learn. As Kara said, maybe in an afternoon you can sit down and learn how to use this. So something that I'm really excited is Apple has this tool for creating short videos on iOS devices, and it's called Clips. So just like the name says, with Clips, it's meant for you to record short videos that you can then share on places like YouTube or send to text messaging and the like. And Clips has the ability to insert something called live titles. So basically these are open captions. So they're not closed captions, but they're the next best thing, right? They're open captions that go on top of the video. And what's nice about it is that as you're shooting the video, it uses speech recognition to add those captions into it. So just like you would dictate into your device using, the Siri personal assistant, as you're recording the video, you're just dictating basically the captions. And then when you're finished, it combines everything into a short video file that you can send to someone or you can share online. And beyond just that, subtitling feature, it also has the ability for you to add a title card so you can identify what that video is about. If you're doing a how-to video, you can put in callouts, so you can put in arrows. And for those of you, how many of you are Disney fans out there? Or Pixar fans or Star Wars fans? Yes, you can add callouts where you can put in, Donald Duck's hand to point to things on the video. Or you can have one of the characters from Star Wars appear in your video, or you can do emojis, right? Emojis are a great way to convey a lot of emotional information in the video. And even better, there is music already as part of the app. I don't know how many of you know who Hans Zimmer is, but he's a really well-known composer of Hollywood movies. Well, there is a track already included with Clips from Hans Zimmer. So if you want to make your video sound like it's a Hollywood production, that music is in there for you to to add it to your video. And then of course you can do the live titles. So open captioning is part of it. All right, so we're coming to the end here. So just another few minutes and then I'm going to open it up for questions. But the other thing about captions is, again, talking about quality. It's not just that they're synchronized and that the timing is right, but we need to make sure that they're accurate. We need to make sure that they're consistent. So if you identify speakers in one part of the video in one way, you want to do that throughout, because if you change things, it can be distracting or it can throw people off from what they're supposed to be doing, which is understanding the video. It needs to be clear. So you need to include that speaker identification. You don't want to leave it to chance that people will guess who's actually speaking. You want to make sure that speaker identification is part of it. you want to make sure they're synchronized. So that's really important. If the captions lag behind the audio, it's almost like when if you can hear when the audio is off from a foreign movie and you're trying to follow along with the lips and you're trying to listen and it just doesn't seem right. Well, that's the same experience when the captions are not synchronized to the audio. So we want to make sure that that's a big part of it. And then we also want to make sure that, they're seen and legible. So they're big enough, they're in a good color. I generally do my captions in yellow because there are times when the video has a white background. And if my captions are white, they will disappear into the background. Now, this is, there are options within the video players too, where people can go in and adjust the captions, change their size, change the font, and so on. You can do that on the devices that I use, the iPhone, the iPad, the Macs. You can do that on Windows, I know, on Windows Media Player. And so generally you can go in and change that, but you want to start with a good baseline. So I usually set my font to something like Arial, that's nice and clean. And then generally I start with 14 point in my captioning software. And again, like I said, I use yellow text so that it stands out even if there's a white background. The captioning key, www.captioningkey.org, has a lot more resources about what makes for quality captions. But if you want to remember, I've created this short acronym for you. It's ACCESS. So that stands for accurate, consistent, clear, equal, synchronized, seen, and legible. And the captioning key expands on this information even more. They have guidance on how to split the captions. How long should the captions be? How do you deal with when there's sounds, the onomatopoeia? How do you handle those things? So all those questions are answered in the captioning key and their resources. So I encourage you, if you want to continue learning more after this video, if you're watching it, that you visit the captioning key and learn more about captioning there. So I want to end with this, and I'm going to open it up for questions. So remember that captioning, like much of accessibility, is both an art and a science. So there are standards, right? There are, like, the captioning key has a number of best practices for what we do when we want to create quality captions. But it also is something that you get better with time. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. So as you do it, you'll learn about the capabilities of the software that you're using, or you'll learn about the process for creating YouTube captions. And it's going to become easier just as a result of muscle memory, especially if you do it a lot. But again, it's not just science. It's not just about meeting the law and meeting the requirements. It's also an art. And so it's something that you can and should get better at, because it can make a big difference in the lives of our students. It could be the difference between them being able to complete an assessment and not, right? And so that could have a big impact on their educational lives. So I'm a big advocate of captions just for that reason, not only my own needs, but the needs of the people that I work with. So with that, I'm going to open it up. We have about 5 minutes left to see if there are any questions that you have. So it looks like I timed it perfectly. So a couple of things that you can, other resources. My website is luisperezonline.com, so you can find a lot of the content that I create there. Or you can go to my YouTube channel at youtube.com lfperez72. I do a lot of how-to videos around iOS devices because that's primarily what I use. But I do have some videos on Chromebooks and Android devices as well. Not recently, I haven't been doing as many of those. But definitely check out my YouTube channel. Everything that I put on there is captioned. And then also you can follow me on Twitter at EyeOnAccess. That's EYEONAXS. So let's see if you have any questions for me. Just go ahead and type them in the chat area and I'll see what I can do. Or anything that wasn't clear during the presentation, go ahead and type it into the chat area. Or actually, I hate when I ask that question during workshops and presentations, so I'm going to rephrase it a different way. What's your takeaway from today? What's the one thing that you learned that you are going to put into action? Or the great aha. So I'll let you go ahead and type that into the chat area, or any questions. I'll take both. Absolutely. Definitely try YouTube captions, and then remember, you can edit them. You can bring in an external script and just have YouTube do the timing. So that's going to result in better options for you. Lynn asked, repeat a couple of software programs. Absolutely, Lynn. So the first one, I'm just going to type the names too in the chat area. The first one is Cadet. And then the second one is MovieCaptioner. So Cadet is free. MovieCaptioner is a commercial application, but you can get an educator licensing option there so that you can get it for a lower price, $49. So there they go in the chat area. Kara wanted to mention that the DCMP has a post-production online class. I think we have a link for that somewhere. We'll share that with you, but definitely if you want to continue learning, you can visit that online module. I believe it's free. You just have to register for it and provide some information. There's the link, so definitely check that out. And as Kara says, it's free. So, free is in the budget, right? As educators.
Thank
so
you,
definitely
Dr.
go
Perez.
and check that out.
Before we use the
something is free,
Captionist, I want to
take
go
a look
ahead
at it
and
see
remind
if it's
everyone,
useful to me.
we are
Let's
funded
see.
by the Florida Department of Education, Bureau of Exceptional
Sure.
Education and Student Services, and all the services we provide are free. Please do fill out that survey and let us know what you think about the webinars, Dr. Perez's presentation. Ezra just posted the link also in the chat box. We really appreciate you being part of our day. This recording will be posted and re-advertised on our RMTC-DHH website. Stay in touch. Follow us also on Twitter or our Facebook pages, and we look forward to seeing you in a future TA Live webinar. Thank you, Dr. Perez.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you
If
to
you're
our